Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are discussing about the individuality of Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna himself explains this in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter, 12th verse, that he is individual and each one of the living beings, they are all individual souls or persons. Now, I was also narrating the story of one great sage, Markandeya Rishi. So the question that was raised regarding Markandeya is that even though he was born in this day of Brahma as a contemporary of one of the sages, Shaunaka Rishi, and he was also famous, Markandeya is also famous as the one who has experienced the devastation at the end of Brahma's day and has actually lived beyond Brahma's day and night. So there was a kind of confusion in the mind of Shaunaka Rishi. How is it possible that when he has just taken birth in the present day of Brahma, and we know that the present day of Brahma has not come to an end, already this Markandeya Rishi has experienced devastation which is happening at the end of Brahma's day? So how is it possible? So in reply to this question by Shaunaka Rishi, Sutta Goswami, who is speaking to the sages of the Naimisharanya headed by Shaunaka Rishi, he explains in the Srimad-Bhagavatam that Markandeya Rishi actually is an extraordinary sage who has got so many achievements in terms of the severe austerities he performed in order to attain self-realization. And it was described how he was very, very strict in following all the principles of spiritual practice. He was very, very devoted. He was very austere. He was strictly following all the rules and regulations. And when Indra saw that, this Rishi is trying to get a lot of power, tapashakti, he may overtake me. So Indra tried to distract Markandeya Rishi by sending his own associates, but they were totally unable to distract this Rishi. And Indra bowed down with great respect and said, I could not distract this Markandeya Rishi. Markandeya Rishi was very tolerant. He never got upset or never got angry. Great soul. Great souls are of the nature of always forgiving somebody who makes any mistake. So Markandeya Rishi did not become angry or did not take any action against Indra or any of the associates of Indra who tried to disturb him. He was undisturbed, completely undisturbed. Then, after his penance had reached a certain stage when he had completely absorbed himself within his heart on the form of the Lord in the heart, then the Lord personally gave him darshan. The incarnation of the Lord as Naranarayana Rishi, the Supreme Lord himself appeared in the ashram of Markandeya Rishi and gave him darshan. Markandeya Rishi was overwhelmed with ecstasy. With great joy he received the Supreme Lord. He recognized the Supreme Lord and he offered him nice worship, offered him nice paraphernalia for worshipping him. And then the Lord, and offered very nice prayers. Then the Lord, being pleased with Markandeya Rishi, he said, I am very pleased with you. You can ask me any benediction that you desire. Now, what did Markandeya Rishi ask? He said, your giving darshan itself is the benediction that I have already got from you, and that's the only thing I want. I have no other desire within my heart, no other material desire, no desire for liberation, nothing of that kind, no desire for any mystic power, nothing. So the Lord was very pleased, but then still Markandeya Rishi thought, let me ask the Lord for something I am curious about. So he asked the Lord, even though I am satisfied by just having your darshan, still I desire to see your illusory potency acting. How does your illusory potency work? I want to see that. So the Lord smiled and said, Tathastu, so be it. And the Lord went back to his own abode, Badrikashram. And Markandeya Rishi, now we have come to that point where the Lord returned to his ashram, and Markandeya Rishi, what happens next? What is the way in which Markandeya Rishi actually is able to experience what is that illusory potency of the Supreme Lord? So I am going to continue to narrate the further portion from the Bhagavatam. Thinking always of his desire to see the Lord's illusory energy, the sage remained in his ashram, meditating constantly upon the Lord within fire, the sun, the moon, water, the earth, air, lightning, and in his own heart, and worshipping the Lord with paraphernalia conceived in his mind. Now this is called Manasa Puja. One can worship the Lord even within one's own mind, provided one has practiced how to fix the mind in meditation on the Lord. Only then it is possible. Markandeya Rishi, by his severe austerities, he had completely controlled all his senses and his mind, and therefore he was able to meditate in that way. And he was meditating upon the Lord within fire, within the sun, within the moon. Of course, the Lord is present everywhere, but specifically perceiving the Lord's presence within each of these elements. The fire. The Lord actually is the one who enters into everything in this world after creating, and then he energizes every element to act with its particular characteristic. Just like the heat in fire. Krishna says, I am the heat in fire. In the 7th chapter, Krishna explains, I am the heat in fire. Now, heat is the principal energy that is there in fire that we all utilize. So, without the heat in the fire, we cannot cook, we cannot run our factories, we can't even digest the food within our stomach. There is a fire of digestion called Vaishvanara. That is also one of the forms in which the Lord is present in our belly as the fire of digestion. Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita. I am the fire of digestion within the belly of every living being. Aham Vaishvanaro bhutva praninam deham ashritaha. So, the Lord is entering into everything and energizing everything. So, that presence of the Lord in that form in which He is present in every element, that Markandeya Rishi was able to realize, and he had fixed up his mind in meditation on that presence of the Lord in all these elements. And he was also worshipping the Lord. Worship of the Lord means recognizing the Lord's supreme position and our own subordinate position at all times, in all circumstances, eternally a fact. So, this is the understanding that is there in the process of bhakti. In the process of bhakti yoga, we never think of becoming God, we never think of merging into God, we never think of becoming God or overtaking God, none of these kind of things. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Person eternally, and everyone else is subordinate to Him eternally. Everyone else is His devotee actually. So our business is, somehow we have forgotten Him, so let us actually revive our devotion to Him by the recommended method or process of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga. Now it is described about Markandeya Rishi, even after he had darshan of the Lord, and the Lord had actually agreed to fulfill his desire to experience what is the illusory energy or illusory potency of the Lord, still he did not give up his worship of the Supreme Lord. That's why in Bhakti Yoga, the devotional service is continuing even after somebody may achieve perfection. It is the eternal activity of the spirit soul. It is an eternal activity. The spirit soul is never inactive even for a moment. That's the nature of spirit. Matter is dull, matter is inert, but spirit is dynamic. Spirit is always active. Every moment spirit is active. So, what is the activity of the spirit? In the material world, there are material activities, and these material activities are simply meant for some material enjoyment with a misconception that I am this body. Everybody thinks, every person in this world who's created being thinks, I am this body. So, based on this misunderstanding about one's own identity as this body, one is busy with activities aimed at satisfying the senses, pleasing the mind, pleasing the senses, pleasing the intelligence, agitating the mind, or agitating conceiving something in the intelligence, all completely misconceived understanding of the self. Whereas somebody has got a proper understanding, or somebody tries to get the correct understanding of who am I, based on the understanding I am spirit soul, there is activity of the spirit soul with the proper understanding of the self, and that activity is called devotional service. That means in our relationship with the Supreme Lord, there are activities which are called bhakti, activities of bhakti. And these activities of bhakti are completely satisfying to the soul, completely satisfying in the heart, completely give rise to the experience of joy, ananda, anandamaya. We become completely filled with joy. So that is the nature of devotional service. That devotional service is what Markandeya Rishi is engaged in. Whether it is through meditation, whether it is through chanting, whether it is through hearing about Krishna, whether it is worshipping the form of the Lord within the mind or within the heart, or in the form of a deity, externally in the form of a vigraha, archa vigraha, anyway, or offering prayers. There are 9 different ways one can actually engage in devotional service, Navavidha Bhakti. So Markandeya Rishi was engaged in meditation, and that meditation continued even after he had darshan of the Lord. Sometimes, overwhelmed by waves of love for the Lord, Markandeya would forget to perform his regular worship. You see, this is the stage where one has reached perfection. Then all the time one is engaged in devotional service, then there may be some times that he may not do his regulated worship. Regulated means every morning I actually take a bath at fixed times, or early morning, noon, and just at the time of sunset, and then 3 times a day offer what is called as Gayatri Mantra Japa, perform Gayatri Mantra Japa, meditating on the form of the Lord within the sun, and within one's own heart, and within the water, within the, like this, a regulated worship. Sometimes a devotee who has already reached perfection he may be absorbed in thinking of the Lord in a particular feature, he may not do his regular worship. But we should understand that because their heart is completely attached to the Lord, therefore, even if they are not doing their regulated worship, they are engaged in another form of devotional service, thinking of the Lord. So one day while Markandeya Rishi was performing his evening worship on the bank of the river Pushpabhadra, that is the spot where Markandeya Rishi had his ashram, a great wind suddenly arose. That wind created a terrible sound and brought in its wake fearsome clouds that were accompanied by lightning and roaring thunder, and poured down on all sides torrents of rain as heavy as wagon wheels. You can imagine such big, downpour of rain, torrential rain. Then the four great oceans appeared on all sides, swallowing up the surface of the earth. Imagine the whole earth planet. That means everywhere Markandeya Rishi is seeing, wherever he can see, whichever direction. The land, normally where he stays, he can see some forest, some vegetation, some land. Everything is being swallowed up by the waves of the ocean. The earth itself is getting submerged. In these oceans were terrible sea monsters, fearful whirlpools. Whirlpools and sea monsters. The sage saw all the inhabitants of the universe, including himself, tormented within and without by the harsh winds, the bolts of lightning, and the great waves rising beyond the sky. As the whole earth flooded, he grew perplexed and he became fearful. Naturally, because he's wondering what's happening, what's going on. He was sitting peacefully, he was just engaged in his regular worship, but we should remember he desired to know how the illusory potency of the Lord works. This is the display of the illusory potency of the Lord that we will hear later. Even as Markandeya looked on, the rain pouring down from the clouds filled the ocean more and more and more until that great sea, its waters violently whipped into terrifying waves by hurricanes, covered up all the earth's islands, mountains, continents, everything. Water inundated the earth, water flooded the earth, outer space, heaven, and even the celestial region. Indeed, the entire expanse of the universe was flooded in all directions. And out of all the inhabitants of this entire universe, only Markandeya remained. Isn't that something amazing? That is because it was Markandeya who desired to actually have darshan, or desired to see what is the illusory potency of the Lord. Otherwise, normally when an inundation happens, a devastation happens, everyone has to die. Everyone who is created in this world, when the devastation happens at the end of Brahma's day, everyone has to die. So Markandeya alone remained because the Lord actually granted him fulfillment of his wish to see what is this illusory potency in action. His matted hair scattered, the great sage wandered about alone in the water as if dumb and blind. Where will he go? What will he do? Whom can he talk to? Nothing. Tormented by hunger and thirst, attacked by monstrous makaras and timingala fish, battered by the wind and waves, he moved aimlessly through the infinite darkness into which he had fallen. See, the material world by nature is dark. Of course, we get light because of the sun, the moon, the fire, electricity, whatever. But when the devastation happens, there is no more the brightness of the sun, There is no more light coming from the moon. There is no more the light from the fire. Nothing. There's total darkness everywhere. Material world by nature, by itself, the way it is created, it is darkness only. So he became very, very exhausted. He lost all sense of direction. He could not tell the sky from the earth. At times, Markandeya Rishi was engulfed by great whirlpools. Sometimes he was beaten by the mighty waves. At other times, some aquatic monsters threatened to devour him as they attacked one another. At the time of devastation, actually, not everyone dies like normal death. No. Sometimes one living being will devour another living being. And ultimately aquatically will be killed. So Markandeya Rishi is experiencing these aquatic monsters, huge aquatics. They are threatening to devour him as they are attacking one another. He is caught up in between. Sometimes he felt lamentation, sometimes he became bewildered, sometimes he was feeling misery, sometimes he was getting some feeling of happiness. How can somebody be happy? Because suddenly there was a threat of some aquatic swallowing him up, and the next moment he's saved and he's safe. So when that threat of the aquatic swallowing up is there, he experiences so much of fear. And when he's saved, then he feels some happiness. That relief from that suffering itself is a kind of feeling of happiness. That is what material happiness is. It is actually relief from misery, or relief from fear, or relief from suffering. Some feeling within. It's just a feeling inside the heart. At other times, Markandeya Rishi experienced such terrible illness and pain that he felt himself almost like dying. Now, hear this description. Countless millions of years passed as Markandeya wandered about in that deluge, in that huge flood. His mind bewildered by the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, what Markandeya Rishi is experiencing here is not just only his experience. Every time there is a devastation, all of us, every one of us will experience this same type of, we'll go through the same type of experiences Markandeya Rishi is going through. This is the effect of the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. The illusory energy seems promising that yes, you can enjoy life very nicely in this material world. Because so many allurements are there offered by the illusory energy. But that is only when you are in a so-called peaceful situation, or you are in a healthy condition, or you are in a you're having a good time. But there are also bad times. There are also situations where you undergo severe pain, terrible illness. You are caught up in a natural calamity. You are in the middle of a flood or a huge fire or some natural calamity. So once he was just wandering in the water, because he didn't die, because the Lord wanted him to experience what is this illusory potency upon his own desire. So once while wandering in the water, this Markandeya discovered a small island. See, suddenly he is seeing a small island. Now seeing means, how is he able to see? Because from that island there is some light coming. So naturally in the darkness, suddenly he is seeing some source of light. He is going towards that light. He discovers a small island upon which stood a young banyan tree bearing blossoms and fruits. Everything is devastated, but this island, on this island which is illuminated, there is a young banyan tree just about to grow, become big. Upon a branch of the northeast portion of that tree, he saw an infant boy lying within a leaf. A small boy lying within a leaf. The child's effulgence was swallowing up all the darkness. Now the source of that light became very clear to Markandeya when he approached that island and went near the tree, and underneath one of the branches he saw an infant boy lying within a leaf, and that child had so much of effulgence from his body. Now here's the beautiful description of the child. The infant's dark blue complexion was the color of a flawless emerald. If somebody knows how does an emerald look, it's got a dark blue color. So that was the color of the complexion of that infant. His lotus face shone with a wealth of beauty. His throat was having the marks of the lines of a conch shell. He had a broad chest. He had finely shaped nose. He had very beautiful eyebrows. He had lovely ears that resembled pomegranate flowers. If you've seen what pomegranate flowers look like. Very beautiful shape, ears. Inner folds like a conch shell spiral of the ears. The corners of his eyes were reddish, like the whole of a lotus, and the effulgence of his coral-like lips slightly reddened the nectarian, enchanting smile on his face. The child was smiling, very, very beautiful smile. As he breathed, his splendid hair trembled, and his deep navel became distorted by the moving folds of skin on his abdomen, which resembled a banyan leaf. This child is under a banyan tree, under one of the branches of the banyan tree, and his skin on the abdomen resembled a banyan leaf. The exalted Brahmana Markandeya watched with amazement at the infant. And as the infant took hold of one of his lotus feet with his graceful fingers, he placed a toe within his mouth and began to suck. So you might have heard about this description earlier. Vatapatrashayi Mukunda, Bala Mukunda. There is a beautiful prayer written by one great devotee, Bilomangal Thakur. He has written one Ashtaka. That Ashtaka is called, I think it's called Bala Mukunda Ashtaka. So he is describing, by Bilomangal Thakur is describing what Markandeya Rishi saw. Beheld the child, and all his tiredness completely vanished. He was so much filled with pleasure that the lotus of his heart, along with his eyes, fully blossomed, and the hairs of his body stood on end. Confused as to the identity of that wonderful infant, the sage approached him. Just then, the child inhaled, drawing Markandeya within his body like a mosquito. Then the sage found the entire universe arrayed as it had been before its dissolution. See, outside is so much of devastation and so much of suffering Markandeya experienced. As soon as he went near the beautiful child, trying to understand who is this child, the child inhaled and sucked up Markandeya. Within the child's body, like a small mosquito enters a nostril. Then Markandeya's experiences, he's seeing the universe as it was before the devastation began. He was completely astonished. Then he saw everywhere the sky, the heavens, the earth, the stars, the mountains, the oceans, the islands, the continents, the expanses in every direction. Everything as as it was before the devastation. He saw everything that was actually there before the devastation. He saw everything manifested before him as if it were real. Then gradually he began to see the Himalayan mountains, the Pushpabhadra river, and his own ashram, where he had darshan of Naranarayana Rishi. As he was gazing at the sight of the entire universe, standing in his ashram, suddenly the infant exhaled, expelling the sage out of his body, casting him back into the ocean of dissolution. So then Markandeya Rishi thought, I got relief. Wow, beautiful child, very nice. He's inside the child, he's seeing everything manifest. So he thought, now it's all over. But again the child expelled and he's back into the ocean of dissolution. So in the vast sea, again he saw the banyan tree growing on the tiny island and the infant boy lying within the leaf under one branch underneath the banyan tree. The child glanced at Markandeya Rishi from the corner of his eyes with a smile imbued with nectar of love, and Markandeya took him within his heart through his eyes. Greatly agitated, Markandeya Rishi wanted to embrace the transcendental personality of Godhead in the form of that infant baby. When he was just about to embrace the Supreme Lord who had appeared in that form of an infant baby, became invisible to the sage, to Markandeya Rishi. After the Lord disappeared, then Markandeya Rishi found himself back in his own hermitage just as before the dissolution began. So this is the experience of Markandeya Rishi actually having darshan of the illusory potency of the Supreme Lord as he desired. The Lord gave him darshan. But in the course of having that darshan of the illusory energy, Markandeya experienced something which we all experience end of Brahma's day, but we cannot remember, we do not know what happens, we simply die again and again and again. We keep taking birth. Repetition of birth and death is what we only go through and we don't even remember. Whereas Markandeya Rishi, he experienced all this without actually dying, without losing out on his memory, and that was all possible by the Lord's grace, because he wanted to see what is this illusory potency and how does it work. So now I will take some questions. Unlike food which can be offered to Lord and honored 3 times a day, how does one offer water as it has to be consumed as soon as one is thirsty? Should a large pitcher of water be offered to the Lord? Yes, water you have to offer. If you want to take offered water as prasadam, you have to offer a big quantity. But it is not necessary that water has to be offered in a big quantity and only then you can take prasadam. Water has to be offered to the Lord whenever you do an offering of some food. But for your own consumption, you may take whatever remnants of water offered to the Lord, that is okay. But if you want to take more, you can always take regular water and then remember the Supreme Lord before drinking that water, that the Lord is actually the source of everything. He is also the source of water. Krishna is to be remembered as the provider of everything, including this water. So you just say Hare Krishna, that's all. So in that way, you remember the Lord and then you drink water. That water also has got the property of quenching the thirst. That is because of the Lord's presence in the water as the active principle of water. Rasoham apsu kaunteya. Krishna says, I am the sweet taste of water. We all know that water has got a characteristic sweet taste. If that water is mixed with little salt, then the sweet taste is completely spoiled. Or some impurity is there in the water, then you don't experience the sweet taste. Only pure water, properly in its pure condition, only you can get the sweet taste of water. So that you should remember is always a representation of Krishna. And in that way, whenever you drink water, you remember Krishna and you drink water, then that water you take is actually prasadam. How many rounds of japa should we chant on Ekadashi? Well, Ekadashi is a special day for increasing our devotional service. So devotees generally try to chant more number of rounds of japa on Ekadashi than their regular number of rounds they chant on other days. So devotees who are committed to practice bhakti yoga properly as taught by Srila Prabhupada, they chant 16 rounds of japa every day, whereas on Ekadashi they try to chant more than 16. Some chant 20, some chant 25, some chant 32, depends on time. So there is no fixed number as such prescribed for Ekadashi, but you should try to chant more if you can, and as much as possible you chant. Next question. Only in pure state does Krishna reveal himself. Then in conditioned state, in sadhana bhakti, do we experience Krishna? If so, how is that different from pure state? Good question. In the pure state of our consciousness, we definitely experience Krishna the way exactly he is described in the scriptures, and Krishna himself reveals himself. It's not that we can, by our own independent endeavor, we cannot see Krishna. Krishna has to reveal, and we patiently have to wait for his revelation. But in the conditioned state, in our present state, even while we are practicing bhakti, do we experience Krishna? The answer is yes. Krishna is experienced in so many ways. That is described in the Bhagavad Gita by Srila Prabhupada. That if we are able to even practice bhakti in spite of so many different obstacles that may come, we should understand it is only by Krishna's grace, Krishna intervening in our life, that Krishna makes all arrangements for us to actually practice bhakti. If anybody even chants once Hare Krishna, Krishna's name, that is because Krishna is facilitating that. Seated in the heart of every person, Krishna is wanting that we turn towards him, we practice bhakti, we revive our devotion to him, and we go back to him. Krishna is waiting for that always. He has been waiting and he'll continue to wait till we turn towards him. He'll never give up. So that Krishna is very eager for us to actually practice bhakti, revive our bhakti, and go back to him. So there definitely experience of Krishna is, I am able to chant, I am able to hear about Krishna, I am able to practice bhakti according to the rules and regulations, according to the scriptural injunctions, in spite of so many distractions, in spite of so many obstacles, in spite of so many difficulties we may have, whatever it is. So that ability to actually do actual practice of bhakti is itself experience of Krishna. Now when we take some prasadam and we relish prasadam, that is also experience of Krishna, because Krishna is not different from prasadam. If you are able to hear some nice bhajan of Krishna and we are able to experience some kind of joy, some kind of satisfaction within our heart, oh, this is a very nice bhajan of Krishna, then that sound vibration of Krishna's glorification in the form of the prayer or in the form of the bhajan itself is Krishna. So don't forget, Krishna is absolute. Krishna's form, Krishna's name, Krishna's service, Krishna's prasadam, Krishna's descriptions are all Krishna. So if we hear Krishna's descriptions, we are directly touching Krishna. If we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna is appearing on our tongue. Krishna is appearing in the form of the sound Krishna, Hare Krishna. So these are all experiences of Krishna only. Next question. Last question. Expansions of Krishna would have full opulence and power same as Krishna? Yes. All expansions of Krishna have full opulence and power same as Krishna. These are the expansions called the plenary expansions. The Lord expands in 4 Chaturvyuhas called Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. Yeah, there are 4 specific type of expansions in the Vaikuntha Loka called Chaturvyuha expansions. Yes. Please explain the purpose of the Lord's forms. Yes, the Lord's forms are all meant for His devotees, for His reciprocating with His devotees, for Him to accept the seva from His devotees in a particular form. Because devotees relate with the Supreme Lord in a specific relationship, in a specific way. So according to the relationship, the Lord actually expands into so many different forms. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.